All right, thank you all for coming. I'd like to call the Environment Land Use Committee of Champaign County to order. It is, we'll take an average, 6:34. Mary, would you call the roll?
Patterson, Paul, Storr, Esri,
Here.
Furtado, King,
Here.
Thorsland.
Here. I'll note that Stephanie contacted me and will not be here tonight. We hopefully anticipate Patterson Paul to arrive as we get going here. We do have a quorum, so we can move along. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda and addendum. Thank you, Aaron.
So
We have a
moved.
motion. And a second from Mary. Any questions or changes that anyone wants to make? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, that passes. We have the minutes of February 10th, 2022 regular meeting before us. I'd entertain a motion to approve those. Okay, we got Chris jumping in there. We've got, I think Mary was a tentative second, so we'll go with that. Are there any addendum changes or comments on the minutes from anybody who's present? All right, very good. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, great. Thank you very much. Public participation, I have two slips here. We have Robert Murphy, the mayor of Tolono. I know you said you didn't want to say anything in particular, but if you want to maybe just spend a minute and tell us what you guys are up to, that'll be great. And then we'll move on to our next witness slip. Push the little button with the face on it till it turns red. When you get a chance, do you have a handout? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Not to me.
Okay, very good. Understood. Perfect. So if you just hit the little button in the middle till it stays red.
All right. Okay. Well, my name's Robert Murphy. I'm the mayor of Tolono, and we're putting in a waste treatment plant. We've explored a lot of different options on this. When I took over as mayor about 6 years ago, I inherited this problem, and we've been trying very hard on how to figure it out. So it needs to be replaced. It was put in the 70s. It hasn't had anything done to it, and it's been neglected for the last 52 years. I know that because I was born in 70. So, so that's what we're here asking for money. We gave you our grant proposal that we put in for. Now it'd be awesome if you gave us $5 million, but I understand the money's got to go to all different people and has to be passed around. That's just what we had on hand when we heard about this, and we're like, perfect. This is already done. It explains everything that we want to do. This was our public meeting. We are looking at. We can't find the money is to sell to American Water. We really don't want to because we'd like to keep it local. So we're exploring both options. The other thing, I didn't hand this out, but the lower asks that we would have is just for the engineering costs that we've already paid out. We've paid out around $752,000 for engineering costs right now. That includes, we're ready to go out for bid. So we have two plans. We've already paid for engineering. We've got the plant planned, and then we've got whether we sell it. And we've been doing public meetings back and forth because we want the public to say, hey, what do you guys want? And you probably have the same problem I have in my village. Sometimes people, they don't come to the meetings and talk, but you hear all the social media chatter. So that's kind of where we're at. If you guys have questions, I can answer them, or I can wait until we get to this.
Normally, we don't do questions now, but we'll ask you questions when we get to your item on the agenda. If you can wait a few minutes
Oh, yeah,
for that,
most
that'd be
definitely.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next person who's put in a slip is Dawn Good Adwell, I believe, from Ludlow. So, and again, push the button until it stays red, and then it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay, I am pitch hitting for our mayor. Our mayor actually works for IDOT, and he got called to be on the road duty tonight. So this proposal for $100,000 in ARPA funding was actually submitted by our engineer, Fairgram Engineering of Champaign. We are completing, or have nearly completed phase 1 of our water main project. This funding is for phase 2. Originally, when we let bids for our phase 1, we were expecting a price tag of about $3 million. The winning bid actually came in about half of that. So at the time, in late 2019, we thought, okay, between our funding that we had in bonds and in USDA grant funding, it was actually going to pay for almost all of phase 2. By the time construction started, with COVID, it started dwindling pretty quick because the price of materials just skyrocketed. We are actually needing to, for completing phase 2, is about $2 million. Of our USDA grant funding, we have remaining, but we still have a little bit of phase 1 to finish. We have $1.2 million available in USDA grant funds still. So part of that will be able to go towards phase 2, but we have a shortfall. Our pricing, we just got our unit pricing from our contractor who has been doing phase 1. If they would do phase 2, right now as of this week, for materials, $2.118 million. So we would like all the money that you will give us. Like I said, our engineer put in the request for $100,000. We would definitely like to increase that. We raised our water bills to $55. We're one of the higher water rates in Champaign County. It would be difficult for us to go back and raise them again to try to make up the difference. North end of town, if you know anything about Ludlow, economically it is a low-income area. For our residents, it would be a hardship for them to increase their bill anymore to help cover phase 2. Anything else you want to know?
Again, during this period of public comment, we generally don't ask
Okay.
questions, but if you can stay when we get
Yep.
to your agenda item,
Mhm.
we can ask questions from the board
Okay.
then. So, and I appreciate you coming out and subbing for the mayor, who's probably throwing some salt down on a road somewhere right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
because
Thank
it
you.
won't go away, will it?
Yeah,
Winter
hopefully it
time.
doesn't, but
So, yeah, it's the Thursday curse, yeah. So.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much, Dawn. Does anyone else want to speak who maybe didn't put in a slip? Eric, Brad? I think we'll hold you for questions for later. So, all right, I appreciate everyone who did speak, and we'll probably have you all back up in a moment. All right, moving on. Is there any communications from the board? All right. Nobody? All right. And we're still waiting for the rest of our members. So let's move on then to new business. Again, these are information only. A lot of these have to do with ARPA. And our first up is from the Farm Bureau. We talked about this last meeting. We'll talk about it some more now. And Brad is here. If you have a few minutes for a few questions, Brad. I think you're well versed in the microphone operation here at the county building. So I appreciate again you coming back and for reaching out to some of the board members too. So I'll open up the floor for questions for Brad, Chris, Mary. Let Mary, the floor is yours.
Hi. So do you have any idea what percentage of farmers in Champaign County are not currently planting cover crops?
So the question would be, again, what I guess I would look at it a little bit differently. How many acres are being planted? And I'll just be honest, I don't know that number right off the top of my head. I honestly don't know that. And that's something I can get you, obviously, but that's not a number that I know off the top of my head.
So, I don't know, I've talked about this before, that my parents farm, this year was their last year in Kankakee County. So I'm not completely unaware of the importance of cover cropping, and I do think it's a great idea. So I did a little of my own research because they were at the age by the time it became a thing, they weren't really, it was a little bit too much for them, which I understand. That's part of the reason I think why you want to do more education is because there is a certain amount of resistance. But there's a website called the Midwest Cover Crops Council. I think it's hosted by Missouri State University. And it's got different pages on it where it goes through for each state what kind of both federal and state programs are available to help offset the costs of cover cropping. And on top of that, they listed links to the Illinois Natural Resources Conservation Service, the U of I Extension, and the Association of Illinois Soil and Water Conservation Districts. And I looked into that, and I mean, they really laid out there like how many seeds per acre you would need, what kind of, if you're going for like a single species or a multi-species program. So these are already resources that we're paying for with our taxpayer dollars, and that's awesome because we need to have as much there to help farmers to run their businesses. What would giving you an extra $300,000 then accomplish that isn't already being put out there in multiple ways for farmers to access?
Yeah, so first of all, you're absolutely correct, Mary. There are a number of other sources out there for funding for this for farmers. In fact, there's probably a good 4 or 5 of them. However, I think we have to keep in mind that some of these programs are statewide, regional, and even national. So they're being administered by the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and they're also being administered by the United States Department of Ag. So sometimes, in most cases, there's limited funding for those, meaning they're by state or they're by region. There's some programs that they just had it's called the PCCP, which deals with COVID-related dollars. Those funds are actually available for only 3 states. So we're not necessarily just talking about even just Illinois. Those funds are available across 3 states. But I think a better example is when you talk about the fall covers for spring savings program, which the Illinois Department of Ag administers. Their 2020 allotment for 2021 filled up in 12 hours. So in other words, the funds were limited because they didn't have enough. So you're right. There are other funding sources. I'm not going to say that there's not, but they're oftentimes limited. They're oftentimes very competitive. They're oftentimes regional, national, or statewide programs. And so when we talk about that, it would take farmers, an individual farmer, to get multiple sources, to attract funds from multiple sources to kind of make this pay a little bit. And pay is kind of a loose term even. I mentioned this last month. FarmDoc, which is here on campus, University at the College of Aces here at the U of I, estimates cover crops are $37 an acre. I've not found a source where you could put together and get $37 an acre paid for yet, now without piling multiple ones together.
I'm going to stop you for a minute because that's kind of interesting, because when I was looking into it at the NCRS Environmental Quality Incentives Program, that starts at $50 to $54 per acre for basic single species. And their chart showed that the Illinois basic is $51.32. If you do multi-species, it's $57.39. So it can be a high of $75.80 per acre.
So I must have missed that one. I must not be familiar with that one. But at the end of the day, that's where the university projects the cost at. And some of their comments from their report, it's And then I guess you also have to take into consideration the potential for yield loss. Again, I've talked to some farmers who have planted cover crops and have seen up to 7 bushel of the acre loss on soybeans last year. And so when you calculate that out, we start to look at the market loss that you have. The U of I in their document talks about it's unclear at present if cover crops improve or return or lower risk. This is a quote from their document. Illinois farm data from 2016 to 2020 suggests yields are not higher after cover crops and may be lower. And their last one is, in other words, with no subsidy, little use of cover crops is likely at the present time. So, you know, I guess that's why we're asking for this program. We think it's something that could have a huge impact on conservation and really continue to spur and accelerate that development here in Champaign County.
Well, I guess I'd just like to say in closing that farming has some of the best PR for any business organization, because you can talk about feeding America, and it's true in a manner. I mean, nobody actually eats yellow dent corn. It has to be processed and or turned into animal feed. But at the end of the day, we are talking here about businesses. No one's growing crops out of the goodness of their heart. And I know that my family felt very passionate about what they did, but it was also a way of putting a roof over our heads and food on the table for us. And they would not have kept doing it unless it was a business. And part of the cost of doing business is to educate yourself on the latest technologies. And it's also very highly subsidized. I mean, when you look into the many ways in which you can offset your costs, I mean, you can get, what is it, $5 per acre from that PCPP program, and that's in addition to the Cover Crops Premium Discount Program, which is also a $5 per acre premium discount. I mean, there are so many ways that people can offset their costs already, that are already there, and we're already paying for those. That is being paid for by the American taxpayer, and I'm paying for it happily. So I still have to say I'm just not hot on this program.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for coming, Brad. I too have done a little bit of calling around, and the Champaign County Soil and Water Conservation District will pay up to 75% of costs, up to $1,600 for cover crops. And we both had a chance to talk with them. I wanted to see if we could kind of perhaps get the Farm Bureau request kind of somehow tied in with the Soil and Water Conservation District. And it doesn't sound like that's, it may be contrary to what you heard, but I think I heard that they can't really work with you guys in a direct way. It'd have to be a somewhat indirect way. And I'm concerned because administering a program like that, unless you have a particular type of experience that I'm unaware of, that takes a bit of gearing up. And I want to look into this further because, you know, like Mary, some of my constituents kind of complain, well, that farmers are so well funded, subsidized, they kind of imagine that a bit more than what's reasonable, but others kind of say, regardless of the cost, we need to save our topsoil. It's the most valuable thing that we have. There's a quote on Davenport Hall in the quad on campus: Illinois' wealth lies in its soil. I'm going to continue to work on this. I'll work on it with you. I'll work on it with the Soil and Water Conservation. I'll work on it with everybody that I can till we can find a way to it's not just a matter of kind of saving our water for future generations, our soil has to be saved as well. So I think we've got more work to do on this, but I'm hopeful that we'll find a way to do it. Back to you, Eric.
Eric, do you mind if I just add to what Chris said, or
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
since our last meeting, we have, in talking with Eric and a few of you, we have added and expanded a little bit and talked with some different partners. So in essence, we're going to partner, we're proposing to add to the partnership with us the Illinois Nutrient Research and Education Council, which is often referred to as INREC for short. And basically, INREC was created by state statute. If you're not familiar with them, let me give you a brief of what they are. The INREC was created by state statute and is funded by a 70 cent per ton assessment on bulk fertilizer sold in Illinois. INREC supports nutrient research and education programs to ensure the discovery and adoption of practices that address environmental concerns, optimize nutrient use, efficiency, and ensure soil fertility. What INREC has agreed to help us with a little bit is almost to create what I would call a white paper on this project, a proposed project. And by that I mean really document what we do, how it's done, its impacts, really survey participating farmers of some of the barriers for participation or the growth of cover crops, and then why they then wanted change their mind or why they became active in it. And so they are a great group that's willing to do that. And again, it isn't necessarily that their document will show that the program was a success or a failure, but more what more that what worked and what maybe needs to be changed in the future. And then specifically to Chris's point, we have spoken with the Soil and Water Conservation District. And matter of fact, as I told Chris before the meeting, I had lunch with him today. We talked about how we can work together on this, everything from the programming, the educational component. They have a lot of resources through their association and speakers that they have. And they can also assist us with helping get farmers signed up in the program. As I've mentioned before, it's going to be an uphill push to get the farmers actively engaged in this, because we've seen the early adopters take advantage of it. But we want to partner with the Soil and Water, and we can utilize some of their resources, again, whether that be for the educational or just helping get farmers signed up. But we can also utilize some of their expertise as well when we talk about the application process and sort of creating that application of what that may look like. While we have some ideas, they work on that a number of ways as well. When they talk about federal grants and things like that and federal programs. So there's some options for them to share some information with us and vice versa, so that we can make this as easy as possible to administer, both for the farmer and from that standpoint as well. So.
Anything to add to that, Chris, then, with Brad's response?
No, I'll just say that I think that we've got more work to do before we can come up with a really good plan for use. But I hope that we'll find a way to kind of reduce the wind and water erosion from runoff and loss of our topsoil, and can find a way to sustainably to have long-term sustainability of our soil fertility. This is kind of both. It's going to take a lot of work, but I'm hopeful that we can do something.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I think I made some of my concerns about this known at the last meeting, and since then, in between, again, Brad, I think, is aware, maybe some people aren't. I was a farmer. I grew actual food, and so a different kind of member of the Farm Bureau. You could walk out in my field and come back with dinner. And I was certified organic. And to be certified, I had to have a 30-foot buffer strip around my entire farm, any field that I wanted to be certified. I had an odd-shaped piece of farm, and it wound up eating up, out of 40, close to 8 acres between waterway and buffer. So my question, and I expressed this before, a small farmer, we talk about the family farms, and I'm talking about small operators. For me, 40 acres was a lot to take care of, but, microscopic on some scale. The $7.50, I think, comes out to like $60. I probably spent $200 or $300 just to seed waterways to meet what I had to do. I did get some design granting for the waterways that I had put in, but to be eligible for that money from Farm Service, I had to plant. And they told me what I had to plant. I had to buy it myself. So, this program, in my mind, are you planning on some sort of scale that slides? This is a wonderful thing if you get into the program and you have 1,000 acres. That's a reasonable amount of money to do something with, or at least to help with all these other programs that are available out there too. But how would a program like this benefit a small operator who really wanted to do it, but would need a little boost to get going forward with it? Is there sort of a plan to treat people differently based on scale?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two parts, Eric. First of all, yes, we will give preference each year to first-time planters of cover crops. So in other words, when you talk about some of these other programs, sometimes those that are already engaged in it are ones that are aware of the funding sources, and they go out and get it because they've applied before. And so sometimes that first-time user isn't aware of some of the other opportunities out there. In our case, yes, we will give preference through the application process to individuals that are first-time users of cover crops. As far as in the acreage standpoint, we'll do the exact same, Eric. We will make sure through a threshold each year of that individuals that are small scale will also have a preference in that, ensuring that they have that opportunity. In other words, so that someone that was larger than you, Eric, or maybe even substantially larger than you, doesn't come in essence, consume all the acres. So yeah, we will have a process where those individuals will get the preference first, and those that are first-time users will also get a preference. Now, sorry, I should add one last thing. I'm sorry. Now, keep in mind, Eric, of course, and you're well aware of this too, that that farm size doesn't mean the risk for some of this is any different. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a large small farmer or small. The risk on plant and cover crops and their success, whether it be the stand that grows depending on when you plant it, or how well it keeps weed pressure back, etc. That it doesn't matter on the size of the farm. That's could be big or small, may have impacts like that.
Yeah, and sort of follow Mary's. In a way, everyone in this room is a farmer. We're all invested heavily in farming because we subsidize crop insurance, we subsidize price support, we subsidize farmers in many, many different ways. And none of this is bad. A credit to not just Champaign Farm Bureau, but Illinois Farm Bureau and the National Farm Bureau. They've done a wonderful job of working very hard, and Brad is one of the people I've known for a long time who works extremely hard for membership to come to bodies like this, to continue to keep funding available for the farmers, the members of the Bureau, the people who farm, and do that. And that's all appreciated. I just spent 2 weeks in southern France. It's all farm ground. I, work on these nerd accelerator particle physics things, but they put these tunnels underneath farm ground because it's a cheap place to buy the rights to put it underneath. And in the 2 weeks, I drive around, and I've been there many, many, many times through all the different seasons. There isn't a field that isn't green in the wintertime in Europe. They use forage beets to break up soil. There's a lot of the exact kind of fall cropping that we are talking about here. And I don't know if they're subsidized or not. My French is terrible. I can keep myself from being poisoned in a restaurant and find the bathroom, but that's about it for my French. But they do it, and they've done it consistently since I've been going there in the early 2000 teens. So we're being asked to put a fair amount of money into ARPA to help incentivize people to do things that I know people worry about yield loss and things, but as Chris says, the most important thing is to not have your field blow into your neighbor's field in the middle of the wintertime. And it blows hard here in Illinois. The wind is a constant thing. The acres are big, and the ground is flat. So I would love to see maybe less in giving people money to do the right thing and more effort to get them to understand that this is just the right thing to do. I am all for helping farmers. Having been one for a long time, I would have appreciated any help I could get. But this is really something that should be a program that is not, it's not new. I mean, this is old school farming. It's maybe new again to some people, but it's been around for a long time in agriculture to break up soil this way or to protect it in the wintertime. And I would love to see Farm Bureau and its really embrace the education part of this. If you want my support in funding it at such a high level. This is a lot of money. We're looking at a bunch of proposals here tonight. We have X amount of dollars. And I would love to see people get on board with this in some way, that we didn't have to give them money to do it. And I think that's all for now. I look forward to further discussion. I think this is going to be a great thing when it gets to the full board. So, Aaron?
Thanks, Eric. I guess I'll just make one comment. I believe that a lot of Europe, you can look at things differently, but a lot of Europe, I think maybe the EU in general, if you look at a per acre basis, they have higher subsidies in the U.S. If you look at a per farm, it could look like the U.S. has more per farm, but there's a lot smaller farms over in the EU. So, I mean, you can look at it different ways and make it look different. But all in all, I believe the EU, at least as a whole, the European, the EU, they are higher subsidized than the U.S., I believe, based on what I know. So that's just to put that out there. And then the idea of, which is great, that they can put these tunnels under the ground. Well, if they're buying the rights to put the tunnels underground, that to a degree would be, you could look at it as a subsidy because it'd almost be like somebody buying the mineral rights or something like that for those acreage too, that those tunnels are going under. Just throwing that out there, just an observation.
Yeah, and I can say that it wasn't just over the fields where the accelerator is underneath. I spend a lot of time in a lot of places over there. Again, I don't know, you probably know more than me about the subsidies that are available to European farmers. I know they get subsidies. I know they also foster good practice there. The plots are smaller. They're some, historic, literally hundreds and hundreds of years, the same shaped little field. But that doesn't, negate the fact that this really is a good thing to do. And I'm glad that people are doing it, and I hope that we can get people to do it here.
I will add one last thing, and I should have added this in the beginning, so I apologize. At the last meeting, Stephanie Furtado looked at the plan, and her and Darlene kind of talked during the last meeting of the period that we had proposed was, because it's a sort of a program, and Darlene, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it's sort of a program versus a project, that the time frame was a little bit off, the number of years. And I think Stephanie had made the comment of perhaps a revision in that budget, and I just didn't get that to John or Darlene in advance, and I apologize about that. That's my mistake on that. So I did take a look at that, and again, Darlene explained. I followed back up with Darlene, and Darlene explained that program versus project differentiation, and I understand that better now, and I appreciate that. So did kind of scale that back a little bit. The project now, I know it says 325. What we're proposing or requesting is about 245,000. It still keeps in there a key component with education. And a partnership with the NREC, as I talked about, and again continues to put a large portion of it back out to the farmers through the incentive to help accelerate the program. But again, I apologize, Eric. I probably should have started with that. But again, instead of that 325, it'd be 245. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. All right, if there's nothing more for Brad, we have the Village of Posodum proposal for $250K in ARPA funding to assist with the construction of their sanitary sewer project. I think, Eric, you're here and can talk a little bit about this for Posodum. And if you just turn that mic on and let us know what your name is for the minutes, if you have anything to add, but other than what's already in the packet here on page 6 for those who are following along at home.
Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Larry Johnson. I'm with Fair Graham Consulting Engineers. We happen to be helping the Village of Posodum put together the planning that's necessary to qualify for funding for these projects. So I'm really not here in support of Posodum. I just happen to know the project. If you have any questions, I could certainly address them, but I wasn't asked to come here by Posodum to do much more than that. Thank you.
I think, and I'm trying to remember from our agenda meeting, that Posodum's treatment plant would take care of more than just Posodum's wastewater. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, you asked if they're asking for wastewater? I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
well, it's sewer collection and treatment. Is Posodum, is that the town? And help me here, John, if I can remember. It's been a week, and it's been a busy week. These were tied together, right? And was Posodum going to Tolono? Okay, so this was to connect Posodum to Tolono, and I think we have the mayor here.
Essentially, Posodum is an unsewered community currently, so they have all of the problems that you've ever heard about unsewered communities, that are trying to deal with public health problems and expansions when they have an opportunity. Without a public sewer, it just is very limiting for a rural community to try to attract very much attention from anyone. And so one of the options they had involved building their own treatment facility, which was investigated in the facility plan. What would the cost be? How much would it cost each resident of Posodum to maintain their own collection system and treatment plant? But there's also an option that says regionalize, maybe connect to a neighbor who has a big enough facility and just pay the rates and let that neighbor take care of maintaining and operating the treatment plant itself. So I can't say that there's been a decision made I just know that they looked at that option. They approached the village of Tolono and said, if you guys finish your plant, you know, could we talk about maybe a pipeline to connect so that they could have, Posodum could avoid the cost of building their own treatment plant, because there's a little bit of an economy of scale when you do that sort of partnering.
Okay, very good, thank you. Yeah, I got my direction correct now. So. Chris?
Thank you, Eric. Sir, I saw in the one-page summary, the village funds $6,600,000, almost $41,000. Is this something that the village has that on hand, or is this something that they would borrow, or just the expected revenues people would pay?
No, they're setting up their financing to do that. At this point, they've only started the planning process, so they've done a feasibility study to put some dollars on what it might take to do these different options. Once they make a decision whether to go to another community or build their own treatment facility, then the formal application process, either to the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency for loan money, or in the alternative to the Rural Development, used to be Farmers Home Administration when I started my career. They both will fund these kinds of projects if you make an extensive application process and answer all of their questions. They will make money available for loan for up to 40 years in the case of the Rural Development Administration. But it's a major project for a small community, major, you know, so they're going through the struggles of determining what kind of community support they might have. And so they started the process with a feasibility study to put some numbers on it and outline what their options might be.
Microphone, Chris?
What's the $250,000? So this is just kind of a,
I think that's to start the application process, which is preparation of a planning document that satisfies all of the agency needs and requirements, and then officially asks for loan money to start construction. Certainly, when you have a $6+ million project, $250,000 won't do very much more than start the engineering on that kind of an adventure. That's my understanding. Thank you.
Mary? Aaron, any questions? All right, thank you very much, Larry. Putting you on the spot there, but I think you did fine. Thank you. Next up, I think we'll bring Robert back up, the mayor of Tolono, and we have the proposal on pages 7 through 10 about their wastewater treatment plant. Is there questions from the board? Mary?
I'd just like to say thanks a lot for preparing this document for us. It's very clear at where you guys are at. It's easy to read.
I cannot take credit for that.
Yep.
That was the ladies in the office put it together
Well,
for me.
it's very nice, thank you.
And we've used it at our public hearings
yeah.
meetings too.
So
Now-
I also grew up in a small town and Herscher, Illinois has its own wastewater treatment system. And it is, I mean, my parents' water rates are so much lower than mine are in Urbana. So I can say that I think it's a good idea just to say in public, it's a good idea for small towns to be able to keep their water and wastewater treatment systems. If you have one, it is a wonderful thing to own. So I just wanted to say that, and thanks again.
Thank you. Yep, on the third page of this where it says if we sold the system, I don't know if you read in the newspaper a couple of days ago what this affects you guys too, because you're American Water, so your rates are going up considerably. So that would be about $90 opposed to the $69 is what they would be paying.
They never seem to go
Raise our
down.
rates up, I mean, since I've taken over the last 5 years, we've done feasibility studies. We've done, I mean, if you go to our website, we have everything on there that we've done. Rate studies, the whole 9 yards, of what we need to do to get the money to build the plant. I've raised the rates about 60%, because we were losing money, because it should be ran as a business. You've got to run it as a business, and I understand it's a small town. Like you said, you want to take care of your villagers and stuff, but we had to raise it up. We can't keep pulling money out of our general fund to keep it running. So right now it runs itself. It completely runs itself, and we're slowly, I've taken our budget, which had about 600,000 in it ish, and I've built it up to 1.8. So we're doing everything we can to get a nest egg ourselves, so we have money to, I mean, because it's $12 million. So we can do the loans, we can do the same loans that Pasodum's looking for. And Pasodum's project actually helps us out, because if they come to us, then that way we can monitor the rates a little bit and not raise the rates as much as we have forecasted, because we forecasted worst case scenario.
So real quick, there's no ask here, so what kind of, there is? Am I missing?
Well, there's a huge ask in
There's a
there,
huge
because I didn't
ask,
know
but-
what to do. So you guys got our grant. I wrote a grant proposal, 2 years ago? Or a year ago. And, but it's like for 5 million. So I know you guys can't give 5 million, because you got to split it out. But there's a huge grant proposal in there of pretty much lays out everything that we're doing.
Yeah, just, you had mentioned earlier in public comment that the 752,000.
Yes, right, because that's what our engineering cost is so
Yeah.
far on this project and stuff. And
Good.
we are actually to the point to go out for bid to build a new plant. We have kind of stalled it just to see if we could raise a little bit more money, or the public were asking us to look into selling it. So like we did. So we put proposals out to sell it. We've talked to American Water about selling it. So that's why we asked for the engineering for this grant, because we've already paid that out for the most part. So covering that cost would be amazing, and then that helps us out for the other stuff.
Yeah, I don't know that there's the bandwidth in this portion of the ARPA fund to cover all that engineering cost.
Oh, but I understand.
But I'm sure that if we could cover some of that, you would probably appreciate that. And that would be
anything.
where you'd want to direct it, right? Is to
Yes,
sort of
correct.
settle that bill
Correct.
so that you can hold on to what you have for the actual construction work, so.
Yes.
When this gets to the full board, you might want to, come up with some more definitive number there that.
Do you think I should lower it from the 752?
Um,
Because that's a big
I'm not
ask.
saying that would not help. There's, again, we have a piece of pie, and we're trying to feed as many people as possible with it. And you have, if you are really willing to work with Pasodum, that's something that you should mention. I think Pasodum should come and also talk about that while we're there, Larry or someone. Because the board, my guess is the board will be more interested the broader the scope of help that we can do. I think that's important. When this money was first granted to us and we found out what it was, the joke was that suddenly we have a lot of friends. And we get more friends every day.
Sure.
But this is a worthwhile project. I think, as Larry said, an unsewered community, or in your case, one that's trying to take care of your plant for the people that live there. These are viable projects and right up the definition of what the ARPA money was for. And so But with all that, I would maybe want to come in with a number that would be very helpful for you, that would be sort of in the range that we're looking at with other communities around you. I think that it would sell better. This is just my opinion. You know, if you can come in and convince the board to give you $12 million, then more power to you. Keep the people in the office working, because this is really nice to have. But I think that, you know, there's only X amount that we can do for everybody, and we want to try to spread it as best as possible and as usefully as possible. So, is there any questions for Robert from anyone else on the board? Is there anything more you would like to mention while you got the floor again?
Just thank you for your time. I
Thank
understand how
you. Thank you
precious
for
everybody's
coming up.
time is, so
Make sure you thank the people in the office.
I will.
So,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you. All right, moving on from Tolono, we now head back up to Ludlow, and we do have Dawn here, substituting for the Honorable IDOT truck driver, Mayor, and Larry again. Yeah, if you want, we're throwing Larry in first. So, thank you, Robert. Have a good evening. All right, so first off, I guess, is there anything you want to add while you have the floor again before we do some questions? I think you did a really good job, Dawn, of explaining what you were up to, but maybe there's something that came to mind since then.
What about our water? Is that on?
You're on.
Okay, about our water department. Our income on our water sales is between $8,000 and $8,500 a month. With our current, so for phase one, we have a USDA loan of $940,000 and $1.9 million grant funds. The loan is paid back by a revenue bond. We did not issue bonds. So paying for phase one is coming back pretty much all of what we get, about approximately, I think it's like $5,000 a month, $5,500. That's a loan payment, that's a contingency fund, that's a depreciation for the future. Like I said, it doesn't leave us much. We had to raise our rates to $55 a resident. Yeah, so we don't have much funds that we can afford to borrow. We really don't want to borrow any more money. If I can request to raise that $1,000, I think Matt Johnson put that $1,000 request in. I'd like to raise it to $250, please.
$250K.
Or whatever you will give us. Like I said, we have $1.2 million left. There's a little bit of phase one we have to finish up yet, but the money that we are seeking will go mostly towards materials. I do have the pricing from the contractor for phase two. Like I said, that is $2,118,000 in materials. I don't know how much more you know. We work with Matt Johnson from Fairgram, and he is not here. He's in Arizona, I think.
He's out of town. But I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to be here, or I wouldn't have even said anything.
That's
But Matt Johnson, who is on the road, called and said that Steve Thomas had called him and apologized for not being able to come this evening. You know, he's a state employee, and they're getting ready for the snow plow, you know, the next wave of weather that's coming in. But he did say that he thought the $100,000 that appeared on the agenda needed to be raised because they have a phase two they would like to start right away. And they're about $1 million shy of where they need to be in order to afford it. They've already managed to find enough funds to get halfway to where they wanted to go to do this my mission was to say we'd like to find out how to raise the $100,000 to some higher number if that was still allowed. And that was the main message I was asked to bring.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that precludes you from raising the ask at the next round. I think, you make a good case for it. I would just, as this moves forward towards the whole board, I would try to get those documents in early. I think Darlene will help you get that. Darlene, go ahead.
So I'm also aware that Ludlow submitted a second proposal for sewer connection, I believe, to Rantoul. Are you familiar with that, or is that the same? Are you in the same department, or I don't know how that?
I know that they have discussed that when they finish the water project, they would like to start a sewer project. And I
Okay.
think that's what you're referring to, but I didn't know that it was very far along right now.
No, I think it's, they're running for, like a feasibility study, correct?
So
If you
the
could stay
water
close to the
project
mic.
is 2
that
years
would help.
into it, or maybe 4 now. It's been direct, while they've worked their way to get started on construction. They've got phase 1 pretty much done. They're trying to do phase 2 of the water, but I can't imagine that they would prioritize a sewer project before they finish phase 2. Of the
That's
water
my
project.
question, would be a priority, because if you're asking for 2 projects, then the amounts for each would maybe change, or do we want to consider both of them? It's a question. Yeah, okay.
I don't have any information
Okay.
on the sewer part.
Yeah, I did not realize they had come to the county for funds for the sewer project. That I was not aware of.
Well, I would strongly suggest that spring arrives so that the mayor can be here in person for the next round of discussion on this. But it's good that they get that one last grab at overtime. So I know all my snowplow friends are very happy about one more snowstorm in March because people pay. So yeah, if you want to go back and discuss, and if Darlene is available to see how to navigate, maybe requesting more for the water part of the project, which is what we're talking about tonight, and if there's an additional project, maybe getting that in. So, but thank you both. Is there any
Thank you.
questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Moving on next, we have the Village of Ivesdale is also asking for $250,000 in ARPA funding to assist with upgrades to the community water supply distribution system. We don't have anybody here from Ivesdale tonight, but the information is available in your packet. Is there anything, John, that you can add to this? Yeah, okay, I didn't think so. So we don't really have anyone to ask a question of. Likewise, the Village of Royal is working on a water main project, and they're requesting the $250K in ARPA funding to assist with that. And that information is also there in the packet, so it's all good reading.
Can I
For
say a
those-
couple things here?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So-
Dar.
We're at the end of the projects that are being presented tonight. I will say, as I noted, there's a couple of other ones still out there that we'll bring next time that got in too late or still are in progress. Also, you've seen a couple before at previous meetings, so we'll prepare a whole list for you of all the things that have been submitted. The Finance Committee has asked that we make it known that next meeting will be the last time for this committee to look at those, and that you have plenty of proposals now to fund for the amount of money that's available, really more than we have available. And they were thinking that it would be best to go ahead and say, we've got enough projects, and make a decision maybe at the next meeting, with the idea that you would take a recommendation to the county board by May. Actually, they're hoping by the April meeting, because some of these projects have construction going on and they want to get started this summer. So that was just the recommendation from the finance side of this, because IGAs have to be signed and things. So that was the idea. If you think you've seen enough projects, we can publicize publicly in an announcement in the paper or something that we're done we've had enough projects and we can close what we're calling closing applications. We really don't have a formal process to take these up. They're not applications. They're just proposals from people. So I don't know how you want to handle that, but I'm bringing that up because we do have more projects than we have money for at this point. And as you can hear, some of the projects can use more money besides that. So it's up to you how you want to do this, but we didn't have an official application process. So we wanted to, I think people on the finance side, at least we're saying they want to make some decisions pretty soon about it to get some of the projects started. And they were concerned that people would just keep applying over the next several months. So
If the Finance Committee is interested in sort of putting an end point on this, you said there's a few that we may be looking at next month.
I think there are at least 2 proposals that you haven't seen yet that potentially would be bringing something forward. There's also, I think, at least 3 mayors of and city village councils that I have gone to speak with. I am Homer, Bronville, Ogden, that have said they might, St. Joe have all said we might want to consider something because they have some money to put in, but not enough. So I could reach out to them in the next couple of weeks and say this, if you're going to do something, now would be the time. But that's the ones I know about.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate maybe then, since they're talking about it, to tell them that the next ELOC meeting that we have would be the best time for them to get it in. That anything after that, we may not have time to consider, and see if they can get their proposals in. The process seems to be pretty straightforward, 1 page, and get that to us so that we can, and then if they can have a representative come to talk about it too, that would also be very helpful. So, all right, thank you. With that,
And just so I'm clear, Eric, so these are just the rural projects, correct? We haven't considered anything in the city jurisdictions yet. That's for the second round of money? Okay.
moving on from that, the very hardworking Susan Monty is here, and I hope I have a Halls in my pocket if you need it, if you get tired halfway through. But we're going to start with this online registration for the hazardous household waste collection.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. The online registration period is now, and we're looking for at least 1,170 people to register, and we're about halfway there. Within 1 week, the slots are filling up quick. So yeah, nothing much to say about that.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to new business, Section 8. This is to be received and placed on file for 30 days. Again, this is the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance omnibus text amendment to the material management waste related uses. And on the web, I guess today we got the strikeout copy of this was posted.
No, that strikeout copy was for the pollution control facility
Oh,
ordinance
sorry.
update.
But
not this
this
one.
is in
What you have in your
our
packet
packet.
represents the proposed text amendment, omnibus text amendment.
You have the 5-penny tour of what the changes may be.
Sure. If you look at page 17 of your packet, it provides a good overview. The description on the page before is also a good overview of what the legal notice might look like. And simply, this is just taking a look at the zoning ordinance in its entirety and with regard to waste management related uses and updating it so that it's current. And there I found some errors too to fix. It's sort of like a cleanup of the zoning ordinance, just focused on waste management and recycling type uses. So what we have here is, as you know, we're also updating the pollution control facility ordinance, and there's a provision that needed to be placed in the zoning ordinance to exempt those types of facilities from zoning. So that's one of the first amendments proposed. Several definitions were added based on current statute, and several were removed, or not several, but just a few. So it's all here. One of the uses being proposed as a new use would be food scrap related types of uses in facilities. So food scrap composting facility. Now, the pollution control facility will provide for food scrap composting facilities that are intense and then that don't fit within the exceptions allowed for food scrap composting facilities in a zoning ordinance. So if you understand what that means is, if you look at the statute and section 19A of the statute, there's like the portion of a site or facility that is used for composting of food scrap, and then it lists that it would have to adhere to several conditions in order to be considered in your zoning ordinance. So that's what that is. It's a limited version of a food scrap compost facility. If it were the straightforward food scrap composting facility, it would be a pollution control facility, and it would go through the pollution control facility siting review process. So there's like two intensities of that type of use. And then, just for fun, there's one-day compostable waste collection events, and there's compostable waste collection points, and those are uses that are appearing or that can appear in a zoning ordinance, like one-day collections, collection points set up for people to deliver their food scraps to, for example. So these are all coming hopefully in the future, and unless they're in the zoning ordinance, it would be difficult to accommodate these types of uses. And as you all know by now, food scrap is taking up a large portion of the landfill waste, like something like 15% is what I'm remembering, somewhere in that. It's just a huge amount of the landfill waste. So it's a desired type of use that is more and more being sought after here in East Central Illinois. It's already big in Northern Illinois and in East St. Louis area, but now people in East Central Illinois are looking for this type of service. And then construction and demo debris recycling facility. There's only one here in town, Henson's, and that's another category of materials that is filling up our landfills unnecessarily, perhaps, and it's good to have this use in our zoning ordinance. So it's proposed to be added. Recycling centers. There's one type of recycling center that's presently in the zoning ordinance, and that is one with all the storage and processing indoors. And it just occurred to me that it's pretty restrictive, and if we allow contractors' facilities to have the option of storage outdoors, I think we should at least extend that to a recycling kind of facility. So I've updated that land use accordingly, or propose to update it. And then I looked at the accessory uses such as neighborhood home occupations and rural home occupations, and proposed some minor tweaks to those uses. Yeah, it's nothing real controversial here. It's just like an overhaul of the zoning ordinance to keep it in tune with today's time. Like the last time it was revised for any of these uses was 1996. So that's like more than 25 years ago, I think. And it's a good idea to do this, especially since we're updating the pollution control facility ordinance. It just seemed like a good time to do it. And that's my overview of this. And we're still looking at fine-tuning some of the proposed zoning districts where some of these proposed uses are presently proposed. Like, for example, the food scrap composting facility that would be allowed at a lesser intensity here in the zoning. I propose that it be permitted in Ag 1, and it's only because there's such intense separation requirements, like it has to be 660 feet from the nearest residence, it has to be outside of the boundary of any 10-year floodplain, which I haven't even figured out what that looks like, a 10-year floodplain. That's like, so these are very compatible with ag types of uses. Composting food scrap in windrows typically occurs. There wouldn't be a lot of disturbance to the soils, I don't think. Odor is the biggest potential concern of adjacent properties. So these are not without their controversy when they come forward. So they are being proposed as special use, and you may want to bump that up to a county board special use. So we're looking at these kind of fine-tuning things over the next couple of weeks. That's why we're holding it for 30 days more.
Something occurred to me when you said something about windrowing the food scrap. Are rodents and vermin and all that kind of stuff a kind of a problem at these places?
That's only one way of doing food scrap composting. You can do anaerobic if you purchase those kinds of facilities, or you can, rodent control, I would imagine, is one of the many concerns. There's an Illinois Food Scrap Coalition that is packed and loaded with information about food scrap composting and how it happens here in Illinois. So some of those answers are there. The special use conditions are very thorough in what they would require as far as planning and reports and for any kind of food scrap composting facility proposed.
Any other questions on this topic for Susan? All right, thank you, Susan. Next up, we have items to be approved here at ELOC. The first is the Recreation and Entertainment License for the Feldkamp Demo Derby. This will be at the fairgrounds in September. We did a similar one of these already. I don't know if John has anything to add to this. The sheriff has signed off. Everything is filled out in the form. Not a whole lot of controversy here. Aaron?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, very good.
As presented.
Do we have a second? Second from Mary. Is that any further discussion then? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There is none. Okay, that passes. Very good. B is Susan again. This is a resident survey. I actually brought
thank you.
my copy that you gave us at the agenda meeting here, but you can explain.
Sure. As I am updating the solid waste management plan for Champaign County, it occurs to me that it would be great to get input from residents, which we haven't done before about this particular issue, at least not since the 1980s or 90s, probably. So it's a very straightforward survey that I'm proposing, and it would collect responses related to timely issues such as food scrap composting, landscape waste collection, glass bottle container recycling, a whole array of issues with open-ended question included for good measure, in case we forgot something. So, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward survey that would be available starting tomorrow or Monday for a period of approximately 4 to 5 weeks, and also be available online. And a notice would, a media release or a press release would be developed early next week. Yes.
I encourage you to kind of also kind of work with some of the cities, because there's a number of neighborhood organizations that have real good communication among folks, and they can get a lot of an additional way of circulating the announcement.
Great suggestion.
I was just going to add that I hope this information is then used to help us attract these foods, especially the food scrap recycling, like people interested in running that kind of business to our communities, because I know there's a lot of food waste issues, and also a lot of people that don't, because they rent or students, don't have the facility or the ability to compost themselves. So really excited to see what the results of the survey are.
Don't believe anybody's moved to approve the request for the study, and I will do so to move to approve it as presented. Looks like a good idea to me. Get some more information.
All right, do we have a second? Chris has a second there. Is there other things you want to add, Susan, or any questions from the board for this? All right. All those in favor of the resident survey, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, that passes as well. The next is the Central Illinois Land Bank Program. There's a questionnaire. I guess we're approving the use of the questionnaire.
This is a questionnaire that's being sent to the partner organizations of the land bank to see what their interest is and what they should focus on.
Okay,
So it doesn't need to go further to the public or anything. It's just you guys filling it out, saying, these are the things we'd like the land bank to focus on in Champaign County. And I can tell you that we have already made the commitment through our ARPA funds to fund homeowner rehab in the parts of the county that do not have CDBG fund to do that already. We're actually working on that contract today. But whatever else you would like the land bank to focus on would be great. And realizing that if the land bank focuses on it in our county, they're going to expect some funding support to do that. So they would like us to fill it out. They're asking all of the municipal jurisdictions in the other 2 counties to be filling it out as well this week and try to get it done so they can focus what they want to do for the next year or 2.
When do they want this back?
As soon as possible.
Like yesterday.
Yeah.
Aaron?
I guess I'll just start off by saying the way I see how we kind of got involved with Silva, the biggest thing that pushed us as a county, and this is my perspective, maybe I'm wrong, was the biggest issue was the vacant land sales. So that to me would be an automatic check the vacant land sales. Granted, we have sold, do we have any currently sitting vacant, John? I guess I don't remember. We have been able to sell some of them, but granted, we haven't gotten their appraised values, and maybe Silva would be able to help with that, was part of the idea too.
Yeah.
But do we have any?
We have one.
One.
We have the Fusland property that we
Okay.
still need to dispose of.
And then also, to my way of thinking, the demolitions kind of ties in with that, because a number of these properties that we have been able to sell as a vacant property, well, first we had to go through the whole demolishing what was left of a house. I mean, a lot of, we've had several that were fires, and was the one in Fusland, was that it just been sitting, if I remember right, and was just in total disrepair, so it needed to be demolished. I mean, for the idea of anybody rehabbing it, totally. So those two, to me, would be a definite check as what the county should want Silva to work on. That's my standpoint at this.
Mary?
I think for me, the number one would be the homeowner occupied rehabs. I mean, when the gentleman came to present to us the land bank back during our hearings, that was one of the things that seemed most important to him as well, is to, especially in rural areas, to keep people in their homes, to keep the homes from falling into disrepair. And I think that sounds important. And are we actually voting on this, or? Okay.
Yeah, as a committee, if you guys, we don't need to take it further, but I think we just need some official sort of, this is what we'd like to focus on. There are grants available for some of these things, which they could apply for on our behalf if we wanted them to do those things. I will say, John and I've talked about this a couple of times. We do not have, similar to our 2 neighboring counties, a lot of an inventory, I guess I should say, of abandoned properties or properties ready to be demolished. Decatur has been doing that as a municipality for quite some time. Their money for ARPA, they just gave money for ARPA just to do demolitions in their community. They've got a list of 400 properties. We don't have that case here.
I just want to
So,
say that it wasn't
yeah.
especially clear that that's what we're going to be doing with this, the way it's presented in the packet. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of hesitant right now to, I mean,
okay. At this
didn't-
point in time, the board, as I said, they've mentioned here, the board has received money from our ARPA to do the housing rehab stuff. So that would be a priority, I would assume.
it is, but
the
it
other
wasn't-
things would be-
It wasn't
yeah.
clear that this
Sure.
is what this section was going to be, that you were expecting us to
Sure.
come prepared to let you know exactly what we feel like you need to move forward with.
Sure.
So I'm a little hesitant. I mean, I agree with you on the vacant land sales, but I'm kind of like, are we really ready to say, yes, this is exactly what we should be moving forward with, or do we need to discuss this further?
I think part of it is a schedule issue. And again, I agree with Mary. It wasn't even clear to me as chair from the agenda meeting that we actually had to pick things and pass it on from this meeting. I thought we were going to go over it. I would add that homeowner occupied rehabs. I know we have ARPA money for it. I think it's something. The abandoned homes, I don't see that as the problem, as we discussed here. I know that John talked about code enforcement, technical assistance, not something we're really interested in. Forgive me if I got that wrong, but it would just require more work for them, and it's not really something that we're interested in. The towns, I think, take care of this commercial corridor planning, Main Street thing more than we would do that. And I think a lot of other things we cover under other programs. I'm not uncomfortable sort of putting forward that we're interested in the HORs and the demo and the vacant land sales if we had to have an answer tonight for people. Aaron?
I guess I was just going to speak to the idea of why it's in front of the committee. The three representatives that the county has at Silba would be Darlene, John Hall, myself as the direct county board, and then John Hall, planning, zoning, Darlene, the county executive. And it was just the idea that maybe we should get a little more input than just the three of us filling this out. So that to me is, I think, why it's here, but we don't want to, it is a little bit, I guess you could say, time sensitive. I mean, we don't want to drag it out, and not saying that it's kind of a relatively simple questionnaire, but just to get more input than just the three of us from the whole county.
We basically added 3 more people, and that's all we managed to do
tonight. Yeah, we would have had 5 more, but just to get a little more input from a little more representative of the whole county instead of just the 3 of us, and the way the 3 of us see it. And as of right now, of course, Silva's only is so new that it's only been the 3 of us. I mean, on there thus far. I mean, there hasn't been turnover on, like the actual board member. Not saying that whether or not, I'm put back on as the county board representative, but there just hasn't been that. So it's still kind of new. So instead of, that's where I'm seeing it. The idea as to why it's in front of us as a committee.
I think, to be honest, the real reason that this is coming from the director is because the board itself is made up with representatives from the municipality partners and also the county partners, and there's almost 50 partners. It's a huge board, and most of them don't participate. I would venture to say at this point, after 3 years, most of them don't even really realize they're members or what the land bank does. So part of this is to just say, here are the things we could do for your community, and are you interested in any of them? That's I think, the main goal of this. And also, as you noted, some of these are municipal related and some of them are county related. So I don't think, it's not like we're committing to any certain plan, or I think it's just an informational, trying to gather input on focusing of time of the director and the small amount of funds that they have. So
was the small amount of board members here comfortable with the 3 things that we've picked so far? Chris?
Could you review what was said about the code enforcement technical assistance? Is that something that is needed, not needed, wanted?
Well, under code enforcement, it talks about adopting the International Property Maintenance Code, a vacant building ordinance, and rental registration ordinance. What it doesn't say is you have to adopt a building code for any of those things to be relevant. And Champaign County has never adopted a building code because it's such a big step. There's significant costs involved, significant staffing costs. And I'd love to see Champaign County adopt a building code and then proceed to adopt the rest of these. But we've never adopted a building code, and so I don't want you to think that's an easy, simple thing and we'll just check this box and it'll be done. That's not how it works.
How about demolitions? Because we've had stuff brought before the board about vacant or untended properties that kind of fall in disrepair, such as the one in Foosland.
The demolitions so far have all been done by your planning and zoning department. We've never utilized the land bank for demolitions. Frankly, I would love to push that work over to the land bank and get it out of our department, but that would cost. Keeping it in the department is going to be cheaper than farming it out to the land bank. The Strong Communities program, as it turns out, is a much different program than the abandoned properties program. We didn't know this when we applied for it, but it operates a different way. It requires a lot more upfront work. Knowing what I know now, I would love to stay in the abandoned properties program and get out of the Strong Communities, but we're trying to make do with Strong Communities, and it takes more upfront work before we can bring those projects to the county board.
So, to get a feel, are we happy with these three? Are we okay to pass that along to the land bank
Works.
board?
Those three work for me, but
Okay.
granted, I'm only one person.
Yeah, so, yeah, the demo, the homeowner occupied, and the vacant land sales are the three that I think we have some consensus on. So if you want to pass that along.
Should we
That's what we have.
formalize it with a motion?
Yeah, we'll need a
I'll-
motion for that.
I'll move to approve it with those three responses being check marked, I guess you could say.
Yep, and a second? It's up to you two. Okay, we got Mary on the second. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none. Off we go. New item, this is section 10, items to be recommended to the county board. And we go back to Susan. This is the pollution control facility ordinance update. Susan, if you want to give us the 5-penny tour.
Sure. Well, you did have a chance to look at the strikeout copy, which, if you look at it, you can appreciate that the scope and extent of the revisions. And simply, in one sentence, the revisions streamline the existing pollution control facility resolution, turn it into an ordinance. And the changes haven't changed since last month. What you received in the packet included the proposed revisions with red underlined content, which was input from County Board member Chris Storr. And so you'd see those changes. There's one correction on page 7, I believe, to that change that Chris pointed out to me before the meeting, and that was that professional engineer should be licensed professional geologist. So that's the only change that I'm aware of. And yeah, he had provided many comments, and I appreciated those. I think it's improved with that input. So I have no further things to talk about. It's pretty much a streamlining kind of instrument. It's the same content as before, only doesn't contain errors about the county board structure, districts, the administration, that type of thing. It's an improved version of the previous pollution control facility resolution.
Thank you, Susan. Chris?
Thank you very kindly for doing, updating this, Susan. That tediously going through all this stuff, is a very careful amount of work. And thank you for making, that change about the engineer or geologist. Engineers don't get geological education. And that's what that particular section deals with. I'm still troubled by page 7, item number J. about notification of owners of property within 250 feet in each direction of the lot line. That's basically one city block. And I think a larger, if for example, a landfill was going to be cited, I think more than owners of a property within a block of the proposed site ought to be noted or advised. I don't know how much distance that should be, but I think more than 250 feet. And page 11, I know that some of these numbers, application fee seems, pretty high. But as we've heard this evening, engineering fees and technical assistance. Oh gosh, the Frere Graham guy fled. Those are pretty substantial, and you pay for that expertise. And if the county wanted to retain an expert, the amount of application fee that in section C on page 12, all of the expenses are supposed to come from that application fee, that could get used up pretty quick. Now it also says that that anytime the expenses exceed $2,500, would drop the figure to less than $2,500. That the applicant has to submit another $2,500. I don't know. $2,500 doesn't get you a whole lot, and I'm also kind of, so any portion of the fees, including additional fees that remain unexpended at the conclusion of the citing process, shall be returned to the applicant. These are already pretty small. Sanitary landfill is a multi-million-dollar enterprise. It costs $4 million. $4 million just to put an earthen cover on a landfill. $4 million. That's the starting figure. It ain't much. And I think I don't have a proposal to change what these figures are, but I think they're low in my experience. The page 19, section 10, item A, the director shall submit a certified copy of the record of a public hearing to the county executive within 10 business days of a hearing. Hearings can be really long, and I don't know that 10 days is a pretty short time. Page 20, item H, also under section 10. No determination by the board concerning an application may be reconsidered. All of this happens in a pretty short period of time, which seemed reasonable when all that was involved was finding a willing landowner with so many acres of land and neighbors that weren't really going to object out in who knows where, and then they just kind of have something between an open dump and a cut and cover sort of fill. And sanitary landfills are huge enterprises, and people are much more sophisticated and well aware of what the long-term liability and risk is to health. I don't think this is I'd like to strike that particular part, that's section H completely.
Chris, could you repeat what section the H was in?
It's on page, oh, I'm sorry, page 65, number 20 of the pollution control revision.
Section 10, citing approval,
Yeah, page
resolution.
Section 10, yes, item H, thank you. And on page 65 of our agenda. And section 11, fees and costs. All reasonable necessary costs and expenses incurred by the county in conducting a review and so forth shall be paid from the fees submitted pursuant to section 3.3, which again, $250,000 is a remarkably low figure if you're considering something on the order of a sanitary landfill. We've heard from the folks in Ludlow, from all of the towns that have come in here, what their engineering fees are. And it would not be unreasonable for the county to conduct an independent evaluation or an extensive technical review of somebody else's application that may involve additional testing and additional information gathering, and $250,000 would scarcely touch that. Of course, we have the option of turning down the application, and holding that little sword over the folks, and that could bring people in line pretty quick. But these are some of my concerns.
So if I may, this is an item up for vote for us to pass to the county board tonight, and you proposed some concerns and some changes. What direction do you want to go here? Do you want to not vote on this tonight? Do you
Yes.
think- Okay. And what
I'm
impact?
sorry, Susan. I'd like to take another crack at this and maybe make some additional proposals.
I
Aaron?
do have just one clarification and important point to bring up, and that this ordinance is based on a state statute, and we're not a home rule community or a county here. So we cannot just eliminate item H, for example. And we can't change any of the timeline restrictions because those are all in the state statute that we need to adhere to. Yeah, so any of those comments I was going to mention to you. I have a timeline study we did to make sure that everything fit. It's very tight, as you pointed out. So, yeah, I think maybe you and I should sit down and talk about your concerns. If that's all right, John, to suggest. Yeah, and then we can come back next month again. Is that all right?
Yeah, my question was, is there an impact to getting this before the board if we don't do it in this meeting? Okay, so if you have it on record that you volunteered to sit with Chris for more input. So
She'll be paid.
that's good. Chris will not, but does this
I
voluntarily.
suppose I'll have to pay for lunch.
Aaron, did you have something to add?
Susan basically kind of, my whole question, I guess, was just going to be about the H and eliminating that. I didn't realize that that wasn't able to be eliminated, but it was kind of like, well, what do we put in there? Just thinking from the standpoint, how many times could we reverse our decision then? I mean, it's something like, to me, if the board makes a decision, it should on something this big. I don't think it's not going to be a decision made in like one day. If the board makes a decision, to me, from my standpoint, the decision should be made and stick to it. I mean, you shouldn't be, oh, okay, this came back up. No, stick to it, live with it. They could maybe submit another application and go through the whole process again if they truly thought it was worthwhile to cite a facility. Granted, that would be more on them, but to pay, but maybe if they would have done their homework or something the first time, they would have got approval. Just throwing that out there. I mean, if the idea being to me that, approval or not approved. I mean, that was just kind of my standpoint. But if we can't take it out anyway because it's on state statute, that just.
I don't disagree with what you said, Aaron, but I know that my experience has been that almost always something comes up later, and it's not trivial.
I just wanted to say that I think it's an issue of consistency, really, that these decisions have to be made in a consistent manner, even if something comes up later. Sometimes that's kind of the breaks.
So I think the consensus of the board is to defer this right now. And the parts that we can maybe add to this that don't violate the state statute, Susan can work on with Chris and anyone else who's interested in working on that. So we will defer the vote on that and therefore have nothing to recommend right tonight to the county board from that. So thank you, Chris, for your diligence, and Susan for your patience and all your hard work. Moving on to other business, we have the December monthly report. John, do you have anything you want to add that isn't in the report or any comments?
No, it's, as I explained last month, we're lagging on getting our monthly reports because we are undergoing a big change in personnel in the office, but I think in the next month or two, we can get back on track.
All right, your optimism is important. Very good. But I can say from a historical perspective that you're actually pretty current compared to some times in the past where we were really far behind, I think. Staff is doing well. Even the new staff seems to be doing really well. I don't have a chair's report, and we have nothing to put on the consent agenda. So I would call this meeting adjourned at 8:07.